What's up, everybody? Welcome to Make Things Tiny. My name is Mick, and today we're talking about tiny houses in the UK. I'm talking to Chris. Chris is the Chief Marketing Officer for Tiny House Pro. Tiny House Pro is a tiny house company based right outside of London. They're a fairly new company. They were created in 2022, so Chris is going to talk a little bit about what led the founders to create a company, and specifically a tiny house company during the pandemic. They're going to talk about some of their popular models, talk about sort of the overall reception for tiny houses and the tiny house movement in the UK and in London too. So this is a really great video, super exciting video for those of you who are just curious about tiny houses in other markets. So like outside of the US, what the tiny house industry looks like in other countries, and then also they ship to the United States as well too. So I'm just going to say that ahead of the video. They've got some really beautiful tiny houses, really great designs like the ones that I'm showing you here. So make sure you check out their website, and then also use the discount code to Make Things Tiny. There's more about the discount code in the video description. So if you have any questions, just check out the video description as well too. And if you're new to the channel, please do take time to subscribe. It helps me out a ton. Building a really awesome community of people here super passionate about tiny houses and just going tiny and all things tiny. So just make sure that you subscribe, and then also tap the notification bell so you find out when I drop new videos. I drop new videos every single week. So let's get into it. Let's talk about tiny houses and the UK. Let's do it. Here today with Chris. Chris is the Chief Marketing Officer for Tiny House Pro, a tiny house company based in the UK. Chris, thank you so much for being on the channel. I'm super excited to talk to you and just learn more about the company. If you don't mind, just tell me a little bit about your background and sort of like what led to creating the company, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, hi Mick, really glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to allow me to talk about Tiny House Pro and the tiny house movement in the UK. So Tiny House Pro is a very new company, been around for just under 2 years. And it was set up by my friend Alex Sava and his friend Gensha. Basically, they were school friends. Gensha came up with this idea of bringing tiny houses to the UK, found a supplier, and now we're selling tiny houses in the UK.
That's awesome. Yeah, 2 years is not that long. I think that's really awesome that you created the company during the pandemic. Like, have you always been interested in tiny homes yourself?
So I've seen them around. I just really like the idea of them, especially here in the UK. I don't know how you know about the housing market in the UK, but it's expensive. Land's expensive, houses are expensive. And when I saw Alex set up Tiny House Pro, I was messaging straight. I was like, I want to get involved. Let me get involved. What can I do? And so my experience, my background is consultancy, business consultancy and marketing. So we found a spot for me, and I help him with the marketing and selling tiny houses any way I can.
That's awesome. And I've looked at some of your designs. Like, I love your models. Like, I think that the designs are really like modern. They're very, very sleek, very high end looking. Like, can you talk a little bit about the build process? Like, what's that like? Like, how many are you able to sort of like build over time? Like, what's your production time? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so it takes around 2 to 3 months for us to build a tiny house. It could be longer depending on different alterations. So some people might want something different, and we can do that. So with our tiny houses, for example, we don't include bath tubs. We have showers. However, for some clients, they would like a bathtub. So including that might extend the process by a week or two. But we actually have the scalability of producing much more than one at a time. We can do quite a few at a time. The exact number, I don't know, but I think we can do around 50 a month.
Oh wow!
That's awesome. So we do.
Yeah,
it is a lot. Yeah.
Which model is your best seller? Do you know?
So at the moment, we're selling the hottest at the moment is our New York model. So it's called the New York model because it has 2 lofts.
Okay.
It's our newest model. It's been in production for about 4 months now. But it's the one we take to shows. It's the one people are really impressed with. The reason why it's so popular is because it provides 2 bedrooms, and these are 2 loft bedrooms that are quite private. It makes the most sense for someone to live in or rent out, or having a garden as a sort of extension.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's the one that I saw when that sort of like stood out to me when I checked out the website for the first time. So yeah, that's really great. I think that a lot of people find the lofts to be really helpful. It's a great way to sort of make sure you still have enough space on the first floor for bathrooms or living rooms, or people like working out of the tiny house, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's actually not my favorite model. My favorite model is the Hampstead model.
Okay.
It's very similar, so it does have the 2 lofts. However, it provides a more open living space. So New York gives you that privacy of two separate loft bedrooms. However, with the Hampstead, it's the two lofts that can see each other throughout. So then in the middle will be lots of living space, and it's a much more social tiny house experience.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And I know you mentioned briefly like the housing market in the UK. What's been the, especially since y'all started in during the pandemic in 2022, what's been the reception for tiny houses in the UK? Like what's the movement been like? Like you feel like it's picking up, like people have been sort of responsive to it,
Mm.
like what's it been like?
So to be honest with you, it depends where you are in the country. So I live in London. So when we take the tiny house to London, we get these questions of what is it? What's it for? Where do I put it? Whereas when we go to more rural areas, stuff like Hertfordshire or the east or the south, where there's more countrysides, people get it straight away. People understand it straight away what to do with it. They say, okay, I can put this on my land here. I can have it as a guest house. I could have it as, I could rent it out. I could live in it. It could be for my elderly parent. It could be for my elderly kids as an opportunity to get on the property ladder. So people in the rural areas, they see potential straight away. So they get it. Most of our market is there. But however, we do get the odd people from London buying it as like an office for their garden or, just as like as a sort of extension. But to be honest with you, we are one of the first companies to do this in the UK. So I feel like we're in quite a good position at the moment. It's not as popular as it is in America or even in Europe. But yeah, so people do love us. People, when we go to the shows, people are running in and out of our tiny houses. But it's kind of that journey of trying to articulate to our customers what's it for, what it can be used for. And it's kind of my job actually to give the reasons why you can go tiny, why you can minimize, where you can put it, how to set it up. There's a lot of different stories to tell.
That makes sense. I see where it would be more, maybe people could see the benefit of it or understand it a little bit more in rural areas because they have more space. Whereas like I've never been to London, but I'm assuming it's pretty densely populated like a lot of the cities here in the US. And that's kind of the issue we have here too. Like I do feel that most of the tiny house communities that are popping up are in rural spaces. A lot of people are finding places to put them in more rural spots. So that is kind of like an issue where it's like, where do you put them if you live in a bigger city? Like where does it go? But hopefully it'll change over time. Do you see London becoming more receptive to it over time?
To be honest with you, I don't think so. I think they could go for it if it's in terms of something for their garden or their extension or as an office space. That I can see. However, in terms of actually setting up tiny house communities, I don't think it would be possible. Purely for the fact that any piece of free land in London is snapped up and it will be built on in terms of a building over 3 levels high. So it's what I could see though, however, is maybe our tiny house designs stacked on top of each other in terms of those tiny house living in an apartment style building. I think that could be a possibility. That would be something I would be interested to see how they would do that. But in terms of actually our tiny houses, I don't see our market in London. I see it outside of London.
That makes sense. How far outside of London do you so far, like, have you been working with people? Like, is it pretty far outside of the city?
So we've sold tiny houses in Scotland, which is up north, southwest of England. Yeah, basically all over the country, really. And it's surprisingly because only around 5 to 10 in London, when usually in the UK most of the market is in London, as that's where most of the money is. However, for us, it's kind of the inverse scenario where our market is outside of London.
It's kind of nice, though. I feel like you have an opportunity to reach a lot more people since, you're one of the few people doing this. So I think that's really great, too. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Have you sort of like come up against any sort of challenges, especially starting during the pandemic, or sort of like getting into an environment where maybe people do have to get a little more education around it for them to understand it or for it to make sense for them?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, obviously there's always challenges in terms of trying to educate people on why this is really good for them, trying to convince them in terms of where to put it, how to set it up. But yeah, something that we help them with. We consult them on delivery as well. So we drive our tiny houses to them, and we try to explain that we will sort it out for them. But then they're concerned about access issues or stuff like that, and we try to reassure them that we can do it. We've never had that issue. If sometimes we even use a crane to get a tiny house into places where they think it couldn't get to. But yeah, so that's our biggest issue really, is just trying to convince people that it is a solution. A lot of the time people will see us, it's something they've never seen before. So it's a quick journey from something you've never seen before to actually purchasing a tiny house. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a short timeline, and we have to try to convince someone to go for.
Yeah, no,
because in the US, tiny houses are a lot bigger. People have seen it before, right. Whereas in the UK, when they see our tiny houses at a show, it's most of the time it is the first time they've seen a tiny house. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like that quick process of trying to educate them on why it's a good option for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I feel like there is a bit of a learning curve. I do think that even here in the US, while they've seen them before, they're still not sure like how to best design them or where to put them. So there is still a bit of a learning bit to it as well too, even over here. What do you feel like is especially in your role being like the chief marketing officer, so like marketing director for the company, what's sort of your vision for the company in terms of what you do in the next few years?
So what I would love to do is set up a tiny house community where a piece of land and have tiny houses on that land and rent those tiny houses out to families or young professionals or whoever really needs a tiny house. Basically affordable living and basically show people that you can live cheaper in a minimalist, sustainable way to set up that sustainable, minimalistic culture. Basically make it a really transparent vlog, basically series of so this is how much it costs to set up, this is how much people are paying, and yeah, look how affordable it is, and basically set up these tiny house communities around the country. It's kind of a dream of mine. It's it's probably not feasible in the next year or so, but yeah, it's something I definitely see in the future of Tiny House Pro.
I think that's great. I think that that's something that's going to make a lot of sense for people too, because I do see a lot of people here sort of looking to tiny houses as part of the housing crisis. Like housing's really expensive here. Most cities in the US, a lot of people can't afford to buy a home. And so a lot of people are sort of looking to tiny houses as a solution for affordable housing. And there are some tiny house communities that are popping up with that in mind, where people can buy it and they can own it outright, or they can rent it out and not pay too much a month. And be part of a community. So it seems like you definitely have the space for it with your experience so far with being in more rural areas too. So I can see where that's definitely probably going to be something that people will be interested in the next few years.
Yeah. So one thing one challenge that I need to try to overcome as well, there is a sort of negative ethos about caravan or tiny house living in the UK. And it's something that once they see our tiny houses, they kind of get over it because they see how nice it is. However, some people don't like the idea of living in a caravan or whatever it is. So it's something that we have to try to tackle to get over that sort of negative ethos. But yeah, it's part of the journey. People, when they see our tiny houses, they kind of like the idea of living in something, because it's quite a luxury product. So yeah, it's something that we need to kind of get over. And yeah, it's kind of my job to show that this is it's a good way of living. It's not a substandard way of living. It's just as good as a house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's fair. That's true. I do think that that's a big barrier for people in general. They think that smaller means like less quality, or maybe they won't be as comfortable, they won't be as like happy or something like that. But everyone that I've talked to that's gone tiny, like they love it. I think that it for a lot of people, it's a good step for them to figure out how to live a more minimalist lifestyle. So I think that over time, people I'm sure will see the benefits of it. But yeah, I could see where that would be a challenge, just to change people's mindset around housing.
Yeah, and another problem as well, or issue, I guess, would be greenbelt land. So in the UK, we have something called greenbelt, and this is basically land that you're not allowed to build on, which is good for us because, yeah, for us, tiny house, we don't need planning permission for our tiny houses, so you can put a tiny house there. However, it's also trying to navigate, and we're not legal experts. We articulate the rules that we know. However, trying to convince someone to put a tiny house on their land without them getting into trouble with the law. That's not our expertise. We're not lawyers, but yeah, we know our laws, but we don't know the laws in that area because every council will be slightly different. So that's another barrier that we try to tackle.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, things change. I think that's something that we deal with here too, because every county and city across the US can create their own laws around it. So even here in California where I'm at, like one part of California might have one law and it's fine, and then the other part of California you might not be able to do it. So yeah, that makes sense. It is a lot of different policies you have to learn about. And that's something for people to learn about too. Like if you want to go tiny, they have to read up on whether or not they can do it in their area. So that's, everybody has a lot.
So yeah, that's the advice I give. So yeah, I say we're not lawyers. However, please do your own research in terms of if you can put it where you are.
That's good, because then you don't run into like people being like, oh well, I bought it and but I don't have anywhere to put it, and then they blame you, or like it's not your fault that they don't know like the laws in their area. So that's good. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone in the UK that's like considering going tiny? Like they're looking to go tiny, but they have no idea. They don't know what it is. They just know that it could be like beneficial for them. Like what steps would you suggest they take to be in a position where they're ready to maybe come to you guys and buy a tiny house?
I would say, just ask us as many questions as possible. The more details we know about that person, the better for us. A lot of people will just say, yeah, I'm interested, but I'm not sure. The best way we can help you is just by giving as much information as possible. So where you're based, who's living in it, what's your budget. So as much information you give us as possible is best, because every person is different depending on if you have the land, if you don't have the land, where you want it to be, if you have the services, if you have access to electric, water, waste. There's so many different things you got to think about. So what I would say is give me a message on Instagram or email, and provide us all that information you can as possible, and then we can help you from there.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. No, I think that's good. The more questions people ask and the more information they can give you, it is going to make it so that their experience is better overall. So I think that is important for people to go into it knowing that they're going to have to provide you with some information so that you can do the best job possible for them. Does that make sense? Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate you being on the channel and taking the time to chat with me. I feel like anyone watching the video is going to learn a lot about, you and what y'all are doing, but also a little bit about the tiny house sort of like movement in the UK as well. And there'll be links to the website and to the Instagram so they can reach out and they can ask you questions. And I'm happy to have you on the channel again in the future as like you guys continue to grow and develop. So yeah, it's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mick. I think next time we'll get our CEO or COO on. That can talk to you about the production process a bit better than I can. But yeah, if any of you guys watching have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. You can contact us on Instagram, TikTok, or by email as well. So thank you, Mick.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, no problem. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.
All right, so that was my conversation with Chris. I really appreciate Chris taking the time to talk to us about sort of the backstory for the company. It's really awesome that they've had so much success in just 2 years, and that the tiny house movement is sort of like slowly ticking up in the UK and right outside of London. It's really cool they were able to talk about the difference between sort of the reception for tiny houses and the general understanding for tiny houses in rural areas versus urban areas, because I feel like there's a degree of similarity here in the United States because there's more land, right? So I know for those of you who are thinking of going tiny and thinking of going to tiny house communities, a lot of you are sort of curious about whether or not it means that you'll have to be in an area that's rural compared to like an urban area. So hopefully things continue to grow and evolve in London, in the UK, and here in the United States as well. So thank you again, Chris, for taking the time to talk to us. And if you're interested in sort of checking them out and learning more about what they do, there's links to their Instagram in this video description, to their website, to TikTok. So make sure you check out everything that they're doing. They're doing a really incredible job of creating really like high-end, nice designs and like good quality builds. So if you're interested in buying one of their tiny houses, please do make sure that you use the discount code Make Things Tiny. There's more about that in the video description as well too. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you're new to the channel, please do take the time to subscribe. It helps me out a ton. It helps me continue to grow this community and bring you guys great content. If there's something else that you want to see, if there's someone you think that I should reach out to for an interview to bring them on the channel, please do let me know. You can drop me a comment here, after watching this video. You can send me an email at makethingstiny@gmail.com. Or you can send me a message on Instagram too. So love to hear from you guys. I love creating these videos for you guys. So thank you guys so much. And as always, don't forget to think tiny, and I'll see you guys in the next one.